So let's just get right into it. We are staring down the barrel of a $36 trillion debt crisis?
It's a huge number.
Yeah.
And the interest payments alone are just eating the budget alive.
And the usual fixes, raising taxes, cutting spending, they're just not politically popular. They've basically hit a wall.
Which is where this new, and I have to say, very controversial theory comes in.
Yeah.
It suggests the U.S. might not have to pay back its debt in the, let's say, traditional way.
Okay, so that's the premise for today's deep dive. We're looking called the Genius Act.
Exactly. It's a potential strategy where Donald Trump, if reelected, could pivot the entire United States away from the dollar and towards cryptocurrency to handle all of this debt.
And Trump himself is reportedly calling this a genius idea, but other countries, specifically Russia, are calling it financial warfare.
Yeah.
So what is the actual mechanism here? I mean, you can't just swap out the global reserve currency overnight without, breaking everything.
No, you're right. You can't. And the theory isn't really about an immediate replacement. It's more about asset appreciation versus devaluing your own currency.
Okay, so normally a government just prints more money, right?
Precisely. They inflate their way out of debt, which makes every dollar you have worth less.
Which is exactly what we saw during COVID. We all felt that inflation hit hard.
Yes. So the Genius Act proposes something different. Instead of printing dollars, the U.S. government starts to strategically buy up Bitcoin.
Ah, okay.
And if the U.S. government then signals that it's making Bitcoin a strategic reserve asset, what do you think happens to the price?
It goes to the moon, it skyrockets.
It skyrockets. So think of it as the ultimate asset swap. The government buys Bitcoin now, engineers this massive price surge, and then uses that massively appreciated asset to pay off its old fixed dollar debts.
So that's the Thanos snap they talk about. The debt just disappears.
That's the idea. You're paying it off not by taxing people's income, but by capturing the insane appreciation of a digital asset. It's almost like a speculative attack on your own debt.
That sounds incredible on paper, but it all hinges on the price of Bitcoin actually staying up there. And, well, this brings up a massive conflict of interest, doesn't it?
It does.
We know Trump has skin in the game.
He does. And this is where the theory gets a lot more complicated. Trump and his sons, they recently launched a crypto company called World Liberty Financial.
So you're saying this effectively aligns U.S. national interest directly with the Trump family's personal portfolio?
Exactly. And that's historically unique. I mean, usually presidents use blind trusts to avoid this kind of thing.
Right.
But in this scenario, every time the president talks about Bitcoin, every policy he pushes, he's not just moving markets for the Treasury, he's potentially enriching his own company directly.
So he's gone from calling crypto a scam in 2021 to now potentially building his legacy on it.
And his net worth. It creates this powerful incentive to just keep that price going up, no matter what the long-term stability looks like.
But how do you get the rest of the world to play along? I mean, why would other countries accept such a volatile asset for their debts?
Well, it comes down to leverage, to trade. The analysis points to the UAE as a perfect example.
Okay.
They apparently invested $2 billion into crypto ventures. And in exchange, they got access to high-end U.S. semiconductor chips. It's a quid pro quo.
So for allies, it's a strategic trade-off. But the analysis also suggests there's a darker side to this, especially for countries trying to avoid U.S. oversight.
Right, and here they talk about Pakistan. The theory suggests that certain figures there are pivoting to Bitcoin not for innovation, but for evasion.
Because it's harder to trace than money moving through the U.S. banking system.
It's the feature, not a bug, for them. It allows nations to get around sanctions or tracking. We've seen this with Binance and its regulatory history. For some actors, that shadow finance capability is the entire appeal.
And if the U.S. government legitimizes this whole ecosystem to pay its own bills, it's also, in a way, validating the very tools that bad actors use to hide their money.
That's the risk. It's a chaotic shift away from, the gold standard of the petrodollar.
So if the U.S. does this to clear its books, who actually ends up paying the price?
Yeah. Well, that's where the idea of exporting inflation comes back in. See, when the U.S. printed all that money during the pandemic, the whole world helped absorb that cost.
Because the dollar is the global reserve currency. Something like 58% of all Forex reserves are in U.S. dollars.
So if the U.S. starts to manipulate the dollar's value or swaps it for something as volatile as Bitcoin to clear its own debt,
the rest of the world bears the brunt of that volatility.
Exactly. If that Bitcoin bubble bursts, or if the dollar itself destabilizes from this, you're not just fixing the American economy, you are shaking the very foundation of the global economy. It's an incredibly high-stakes gamble.
It really is the ultimate masterstroke versus mistake debate, isn't it?
It is.
On one hand, you could wipe out national debt without raising taxes on Americans, but on the other, you risk rug pulling the entire global financial system.
And that leads us to the central question here. Is this a visionary move to modernize global finance, or is it just a global scam on an epic scale?
So what's the final thought we should leave everyone with?
I think it boils down to this. If the world's superpower decides to back its economy with a volatile digital asset just to clear its debts, are other nations actually becoming partners in innovation, or are they just being set up to be the bag holders for a new digital empire?
A question definitely worth asking. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.